The sound of a gunshot split the dawn air as Olivia Langley stumbled through the wilderness, her torn dress catching on sagebrush and her swollen belly making each step a struggle. It was 1875 in the Montana Territory, and she had been running for 2 days, fleeing from a nightmare that had become her reality. Her blonde hair hung in tangled strands around her face, once delicate hands now raw and bleeding from her desperate journey through the unforgiving landscape. Just a little further, she whispered to herself, to the child within her. The distant silhouette of Timberline, a small but growing settlement nestled in the shadow of the Rocky Mountains, promised salvation if she could just reach it before her strength gave out or before they found her. When she finally stumbled onto the main street as morning broke, the townsfolk turned to stare. A pregnant woman, clearly of gentle breeding, appearing from nowhere in such a state was cause for alarm in a place where news traveled faster than the stagecoach and reputations were as valuable as gold. "Help," Olivia called weakly, her voice barely carrying across the dusty street. "Please, someone." Her legs finally gave way, and she collapsed to her knees in the middle of the street. Strong hands caught her before she hit the ground, and she looked up into the weathered face of a man with eyes the color of a summer storm. "Easy there, madam," he said, his voice low and steady as he supported her weight. "You're safe now." His name was Vincent Dawson, though most in these parts simply called him Vince. The silver star pinned to his leather vest marked him as the town's sheriff, a position he'd held for 3 years, since hanging up his spurs as a cattle driver. At 32, he'd seen enough of the West's brutality to recognize true fear when he saw it. "They're coming for me," Olivia whispered urgently, clutching at his shirt with desperate fingers. "They'll take me back. I can't go back." "Who's coming, madam?" Vincent asked, already scanning the horizon with narrowed eyes. "My husband's family." "The Blackwoods," she said, the name falling from her lips like poison. "They." Her voice broke, and she placed a protective hand over her belly. "No one will believe I was forced," she cried, tears streaming down her dirt-streaked face. "They'll say I'm lying, that I'm mad with grief after my husband's death." Vincent's jaw tightened as understanding dawned. He'd seen too many women trapped in circumstances not of their making, their voices silenced by men with power and money. "I believe you," he said firmly, meeting her gaze. The sincerity in his voice made her sob harder. He lifted her as though she weighed nothing, cradling her carefully. "Doc Miller's place is just down the street. Let's get you looked at first, then we can talk." The doctor's office was a small whitewashed building with a sign that had faded under the harsh Montana sun. Inside, it smelled of antiseptic and herbs, a stark contrast to the dust and leather scent of the sheriff who carried her. "Good Lord," exclaimed Dr. Miller, a man in his 60s with kind eyes and steady hands. "What happened to her, Vince?" "Don't know yet, Doc. Found her collapsed in the street. She's with child and has been running from something or someone." As the doctor examined her, Olivia's story spilled out in fragments. She had been married to Thomas Blackwood, heir to a cattle fortune in Wyoming Territory. After his death 6 months earlier in what the family called a riding accident, his father and brothers had kept her virtually imprisoned at their ranch. "I overheard them," she whispered, flinching as the doctor cleaned a cut on her arm. "They never wanted me to marry Thomas. They thought I was after the money, but I loved him." Fresh tears welled in her eyes. "After he died, they said the child wasn't his, that I had been unfaithful." Vincent's expression darkened. "That why you ran?" She shook her head, her voice dropping to a horrified whisper. "His brother, Edward, came to my room one night, said since I was so eager to lie with men other than Thomas, I could serve the family in other ways. He tried to." She couldn't finish the sentence, but she didn't need to. "I fought him off, struck him with a candlestick." "I don't know if I killed him," she admitted, terror clear in her voice. "I just ran. Took a horse and rode until it couldn't go anymore, then continued on foot." Dr. Miller shared a grim look with Vincent. "The baby seems unharmed, thankfully. She's exhausted, dehydrated, and those cuts need tending, but nothing that won't heal with rest." "You can't let them take me back," Olivia pleaded, gripping Vincent's hand with surprising strength. "They'll kill me or worse." Vincent squeezed her hand gently. No one's taking you anywhere against your will, Miss Langley. Olivia Langley, she supplied. I was Olivia Blackwood, but I can't bear that name anymore. Miss Langley, he continued with a nod, you have my word as sheriff of this town. You're under my protection now. Over the next few days, Olivia recovered her strength in a small room above the town's only hotel, the Timberline Lodge. The owner, a widow named Martha Jenkins, took a maternal interest in the young woman's welfare, bringing her extra helpings at mealtimes and sitting with her in the evenings. Vincent visited daily, sometimes bringing small gifts, a book from the town's modest library, wildflowers gathered on his morning rounds, or treats from the bakery. More importantly, he brought news. He had sent telegrams to contacts in Wyoming, discreetly inquiring about the Blackwood family. A week after her arrival, he knocked on her door, his expression grave. Edward Blackwood is alive, he told her without preamble, but he's claiming you tried to murder him after he caught you stealing family heirlooms. Olivia paled. That's a lie. I never. Vincent held up a hand. I know. The telegram also mentioned that the Blackwoods have hired Pinkerton detectives to find you. They're saying you're mentally unstable, dangerous to yourself and others, including your unborn child. They want to take my baby, she whispered, arms encircling her growing belly. Over my dead body, Vincent replied, the steel in his voice matching the determination in his eyes. But we need a plan. The Blackwoods have money and influence. I'm just a sheriff in a small Montana town. That evening, they sat in Martha's kitchen, the three of them formulating a strategy. The widow set down a pot of coffee with a decisive thump. She needs a new identity, Martha declared, and a reason to be here that no one would question. Vincent nodded slowly. We could say she's your niece, come to help after being widowed back east. That might work for the townsfolk, Olivia agreed, but not for Pinkerton detectives. They're thorough. Martha's eyes sparkled with unexpected mischief. Then we'll have to give them something they won't question because it's too scandalous not to be true. 2 days later, the news spread through Timberline that Sheriff Dawson had secretly married a young widow from back east, who had come to Montana seeking a new start after losing her husband. The marriage had been hasty, some gossiped, because the bride was in a delicate condition, clearly a case of the sheriff doing the honorable thing. I'm sorry about your reputation, Olivia told Vincent as they sat on the small porch behind the sheriff's modest house, where she had moved following their marriage. The summer evening was warm, crickets singing in the tall grass. Vincent shrugged, looking out over the mountains painted golden by the setting sun. Reputation's just what other folks think of you. I'm more concerned with what I think of myself. Still, to tie yourself to a stranger this way. He turned to look at her, his gaze steady. You're not exactly a stranger anymore, Olivia, and this arrangement protects both you and your child. That's what matters. The arrangement was meant to be temporary, of course. They slept in separate rooms, maintaining a proper distance despite the fiction they presented to the town. But as summer faded into autumn, something shifted between them, subtle as the changing light on the mountains. It began with small moments, Vincent teaching Olivia to shoot a revolver just in case, their hands touching as he adjusted her grip. Olivia waiting up for him when he worked late, a hot meal saved from dinner, the way his eyes lingered on her when she thought he wasn't looking, the flutter in her heart when he smiled. One evening in early October, Olivia sat on the porch swing, a shawl around her shoulders against the growing chill. Her 7th month of pregnancy had rounded her figure considerably, giving her a radiant glow that Vincent found increasingly difficult to ignore. Letter came for you, he said, settling beside her and handing over an envelope. From that lawyer in Denver I contacted. Olivia opened it with trembling fingers, reading quickly. He says there might be a case against the Blackwoods, evidence of financial impropriety in how they've handled Thomas's estate, which legally should have partial provisions for me and the child. That's good news, Vincent said, though his tone suggested otherwise. What is it? She asked, noting his furrowed brow. 2 men arrived on today's stage, strangers asking questions about new arrivals in town, particularly young women. He took her hand. I think they're Pinkertons. Fear flashed across her face, but she straightened her shoulders. We knew this might happen. The marriage ruse might not be enough. It's not a ruse anymore, Vincent said quietly. Not for me, at least. Her eyes widened, and for a moment neither spoke. Vincent, you don't have to say anything, he interrupted. I know this started as a way to protect you, but these past months. I've come to care for you, Olivia, more than I should, perhaps. I care for you too, she admitted softly, but I'm afraid my life is so complicated, so damaged. And this child will be loved, he finished firmly, by both of us if you'll allow it. Before she could respond, the sound of approaching horses made them both tense. Vincent stood, placing himself protectively in front of Olivia as 3 riders came into view in the fading light. Stay here, he murmured, hand moving to the revolver at his hip. The men halted their horses at the gate. In the lead was a tall figure with a bearing that spoke of money and the expectation of deference. Sheriff Dawson, the man called. I understand you've been harboring my daughter-in-law. I'm Jonathan Blackwood. Vincent's expression remained impassive. Don't know anyone by that name, sir. This is my home and that's my wife on the porch. Jonathan Blackwood's thin smile didn't reach his cold eyes. A convenient story, but Olivia was married to my son Thomas when he died. She's carrying my grandchild, the Blackwood heir. We've come to take her home. Your son might be dead, Mr. Blackwood, but I assure you I'm very much alive, Vincent replied evenly. And that's my wife and my child she's carrying. Olivia had risen to her feet, one hand on her belly, the other gripping the porch rail. You have no right to be here, Jonathan, she called out, her voice stronger than she felt. You lost any claim to me or my child when your son Edward tried to force himself on me. The second rider, a younger man with the same aristocratic features as his father, scoffed loudly. More delusions. Edward was trying to stop her from stealing mother's jewelry. That's not true, Olivia cried. Jonathan Blackwood sighed dramatically. You see how it is, Sheriff. The poor girl isn't well. Grief has affected her mind. We only want to ensure she and the baby receive proper care. She's receiving proper care right here, Vincent replied coldly. As my wife, she's under my protection and the protection of this town. I suggest you gentlemen move on. The third man, who had remained silent until now, spoke up. His neat suit and methodical demeanor marked him as different from the Blackwoods, a hired professional. Sheriff, I have legal documents stating that Mrs. Blackwood is mentally incompetent and a danger to herself and her unborn child. He produced a sheaf of papers. Signed by a judge in Wyoming Territory, we're authorized to return her to her family's care. Vincent didn't reach for the documents. Those papers have no jurisdiction here, and her name isn't Blackwood anymore. If you want to press this matter, we can take it up with the territorial judge in Helena, but he's not due back this way for 2 months. Jonathan Blackwood's face darkened with anger. You're making a grave mistake, Sheriff. The Blackwood name carries weight even in this backwater. And my badge carries weight in this town, Vincent countered. Now I'm asking you politely to leave my property. For a tense moment, it seemed the confrontation might escalate. Then Jonathan Blackwood gave a curt nod. This isn't over. We'll be staying at your local hotel. I suggest you reconsider your position by morning. As the men rode away, Vincent hurried to Olivia, who had gone pale with shock. They found me, she whispered, trembling. What are we going to do? We're going to fight, Vincent said firmly. Together. That night, while Olivia finally slept, Vincent met with several trusted townspeople at the sheriff's office. Dr. Miller, Martha Jenkins, Judge Harmon, retired but still respected, and Samuel Fletcher, owner of the town's newspaper. The Blackwoods won't give up easily, Vincent explained after relating Olivia's story. They have money, influence, and apparently some legal documents, fraudulent though they may be. What do you need from us, Vince? Samuel asked, adjusting his spectacles. Witnesses. People who can attest to Olivia's sound mind and the legitimacy of our marriage. If they try to take this to court, we need to present a united front. Judge Harmon stroked his gray beard thoughtfully. The marriage certificate won't hold up under serious scrutiny. You need a real ceremony with proper documentation. And quickly, Martha added, before those vultures can make another move. Vincent hesitated. I can't ask Olivia to bind herself to me legally just to escape the Blackwoods. Once this is over, she might want her freedom. Dr. Miller gave him a knowing look. Is that really all it would be, Vince? a legal maneuver. The sheriff's silence was answer enough. At dawn, Vincent returned home to find Olivia already awake, sitting at the kitchen table with determined eyes. "I want a real wedding," she said without preamble. "A legal one with witnesses and documentation that even the Blackwoods can't dispute." Vincent sat across from her, studying her face. "Olivia, you don't have to do this. We'll find another way." She reached across the table to take his hands. "This isn't just about the Blackwoods anymore. You asked if I would allow you to love this child. The truth is, I want that more than anything, and I want." She faltered briefly, then continued with quiet certainty. "I want you, Vincent, not just as my protector or my friend, but as my husband. If you'll have me." The smile that broke across his face was like sunrise over the mountains. "I've wanted that since the moment you looked up at me in the street with those brave, determined eyes. I think I fell in love with you then, Olivia Langley." "And I with you," she whispered, though it took me longer to recognize it. They were married that afternoon in the town's small church, with half of Timberline in attendance. Olivia wore a simple blue dress that Martha had altered to accommodate her condition, with wildflowers in her hair. Vincent couldn't take his eyes off her as she walked down the aisle toward him, radiant despite the circumstances that had brought them to this moment. Judge Harmon performed the ceremony, his authoritative presence lending additional legitimacy to the proceedings. Samuel Fletcher covered the event for his newspaper, ensuring that an official announcement would be published and preserved. "Let anyone who would challenge the validity of this union speak now," Judge Harmon declared during the ceremony, his voice carrying to the back of the church, where Jonathan Blackwood and his son stood watching with barely concealed fury. No one spoke. The Blackwoods knew that to object publicly would only draw attention to their questionable claims. Instead, they slipped out before the ceremony ended. "They'll try something else," Vincent murmured to Olivia as they greeted well-wishers after the ceremony. "This isn't over." "I know," she replied, squeezing his hand, "but we're stronger together." The newlyweds had little time to celebrate their union. That evening, as they sat down to a quiet dinner in their home, a knock at the door revealed Dr. Miller, his expression grave. "The Blackwoods have filed a formal complaint with Judge Peterson in Helena," he said without preamble. "They're claiming you coerced Olivia into marriage to gain access to the Blackwood fortune through her child." Vincent cursed under his breath. "Judge Peterson has always been susceptible to influence from wealthy families. How did you hear about this?" "My cousin works as a clerk in the court. He sent a telegram as soon as the papers were filed. The judge has issued a summons for both of you to appear next week." Olivia placed a protective hand over her belly, feeling the baby kick in response. "Can they take my child once it's born?" "Legally," Dr. Miller hesitated. "If they can convince the judge that you're unfit and that the child is a Blackwood by blood, it's possible." "No," Vincent said firmly. "We won't let that happen." That night, as they prepared for bed still in separate rooms despite their new status as husband and wife, Olivia paused in the hallway outside Vincent's door. "Vincent," she called softly, and he appeared immediately, concern evident on his face. "What is it?" "Are you all right? The baby, we're fine," she assured him, smiling at his protective instinct. I don't want to be alone tonight." His expression softened, and he opened the door wider in silent invitation. As they lay together in the darkness, her head on his chest and his arm protectively around her, Olivia felt truly safe for the first time in months. "I never thought I would find love again after Thomas," she whispered. "Especially not like this, not so deep and certain." Vincent pressed a kiss to her forehead. "Life has a way of surprising us. When you stumbled into my town, I was just going through the motions. You gave me purpose again. We'll face whatever comes next together," she promised. "The Blackwoods, the court, all of it." "Together," he agreed, his hand coming to rest gently on the swell of her belly where their future slept. The journey to Helena was arduous, particularly for Olivia in her condition. Vincent insisted on taking the stagecoach rather than horseback, though it meant a longer trip. They were accompanied by Dr. Miller, who had volunteered to testify to Olivia's sound mental state, and Martha Jenkins, whose sharp tongue and respectability made her an excellent witness. The territorial capital was bustling with activity when they arrived. a stark contrast to the quiet of Timberline. They took rooms at a modest hotel near the courthouse, aware that the Blackwoods would be staying in more luxurious accommodations. The night before their court appearance, Vincent found Olivia standing by the window, gazing out at the lamplit streets. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, joining her. "My father," she replied, surprising him. "He was a professor at a small college in Pennsylvania. He always taught me to stand up for truth, even when it was difficult." She turned to face Vincent, her expression determined. "He would approve of you, I think, of your courage and your principles." "I wish I could have met him," Vincent said sincerely. "So do I," she smiled sadly. "Both my parents died in a typhoid epidemic when I was 19. That's when I went to live with my aunt in Wyoming, where I met Thomas." Her hands cradled her belly. "Family is precious, Vincent. I won't let the Blackwoods take mine away." The courthouse the next morning was imposing, with its high ceilings and polished woodwork. Judge Peterson, a thin man with piercing eyes and a reputation for conservative rulings, presided from his elevated bench with an air of detached authority. The Blackwoods had hired an expensive lawyer from Denver, a man named Harrison Wells, known for his ruthless courtroom tactics. He painted a dramatic picture of a grieving, mentally unstable young widow who had fled her supportive family and fallen prey to an opportunistic small-town sheriff with designs on the Blackwood fortune. Mrs. Blackwood, and she is still legally Mrs. Blackwood, despite this hasty remarriage, was under the care of physicians following her husband's tragic death, Wells argued smoothly. Her pregnancy, combined with her grief, led to delusional thinking. She accused family members of terrible things, attempted to harm her brother-in-law, and fled with family heirlooms. When it was Vincent's turn to speak, he rose calmly, his plain clothes and direct manner a stark contrast to Wells's polished performance. "Your Honor, the woman sitting beside me is Olivia Dawson, my lawfully wedded wife. She came to Timberline, Montana territory seeking refuge from abuse and exploitation at the hands of the Blackwood family. Far from being mentally unstable, she has shown remarkable courage and clarity of thought in protecting herself and her unborn child." Dr. Miller testified next, speaking with the authority of his profession. "I've been treating Mrs. Dawson since her arrival in Timberline. She shows no signs of mental instability or delusion. Her fears regarding the Blackwood family are consistent and specific, not the ramblings of an unsound mind. Furthermore, the physical evidence I observed upon her arrival, exhaustion, dehydration, injuries consistent with a desperate flight through difficult terrain, supports her account of escaping a threatening situation." Martha Jenkins provided character testimony, describing Olivia's quick integration into the community, her clear-headed participation in town activities, and the obvious genuine affection between the newlyweds. Then came Olivia's turn. As she rose to take the stand, Vincent noticed the Blackwoods leaning forward, as if anticipating her breakdown under questioning. Instead, she spoke with quiet dignity, her voice steady as she recounted her marriage to Thomas Blackwood, the suspicious circumstances of his death, and the subsequent mistreatment by his family. "After Thomas died, I discovered I was with child," she explained. "Initially, the family seemed supportive, but when Jonathan realized the baby would inherit Thomas's portion of the family holdings, things changed. They began to isolate me, restrict my movements, and suggest that the child wasn't Thomas's, a cruel lie meant to discredit me." "And what of the alleged assault by Edward Blackwood?" Judge Peterson asked, his tone neutral. Olivia met his gaze directly. "He came to my room one night, drunk and insistent that I should serve the family now that Thomas was gone. His intentions were unmistakable. When he tried to force himself on me, I defended myself with a candlestick. I feared for my life and the life of my child, so I fled." Wells rose for cross-examination, his smile predatory. "Mrs. Blackwood Dawson," she corrected firmly. "My name is Olivia Dawson now." Slightly thrown, the lawyer continued. "You claim Edward Blackwood attempted to assault you, yet you have no witnesses to this alleged attack. Isn't it more likely that you, distraught over your husband's death and confused by your condition, misinterpreted his actions. No, Mr. Wells, there was no misinterpretation possible when a man tears your nightgown and pins you to a bed, Olivia replied, her bluntness causing a stir in the courtroom. The only confusion was the Blackwoods' belief that they could control me and my child. And what of your hasty marriage to Sheriff Dawson? Convenient timing, wouldn't you say? Just as the family began searching for you in earnest, Vincent tensed, but Olivia remained composed. My marriage to Vincent Dawson is the first truly free choice I've made since Thomas died. The Blackwoods see me as property, an inconvenient vessel for the next Blackwood heir. Vincent sees me as a person deserving of respect and protection. Yes, our marriage happened quickly, but genuine love often does in times of adversity. The proceedings continued for 2 more days, with witnesses from both sides presenting their testimonies. On the final day, as Judge Peterson prepared to give his ruling, a commotion at the back of the courtroom drew everyone's attention. A man entered, moving with difficulty on a cane. He was in his 30s, well-dressed despite the dust of travel on his clothes. "I apologize for the interruption, Your Honor," he said, his voice carrying clearly. "My name is William Blackwood. I'm the eldest son of Jonathan Blackwood and executor of my brother Thomas's estate." Jonathan Blackwood had gone pale. "William, what are you doing here? You're supposed to be in San Francisco on business." "I returned early when I received a telegram about these proceedings," William replied coldly. "I'm here to set the record straight." Judge Peterson peered down from his bench. "Are you offering testimony in this case, Mr. Blackwood?" "I am, Your Honor, in support of Olivia Dawson." A murmur ran through the courtroom as William made his way to the witness stand. Once sworn in, he wasted no time in demolishing his family's case. "Thomas's marriage to Olivia was not approved by my father because she wasn't from a wealthy family. But Thomas loved her deeply. When he died in what I now believe was no accident, he left a will naming Olivia as his primary heir, with provisions for any children they might have." "Do you have this will?" the judge asked. William nodded. "I do. Thomas gave me a copy for safekeeping, knowing our father might try to prevent its execution." He produced a document from his jacket. "I also have correspondence from Thomas expressing concerns about our father's business practices and fears for Olivia's safety if anything should happen to him." As the evidence mounted against the Blackwoods, Olivia felt Vincent's hand tighten around hers. For the first time since this ordeal began, she allowed herself to hope that it might truly end. William's final revelation proved decisive. "After hearing of Olivia's flight and my family's claims about her mental state, I hired an independent investigator. He found evidence that my brother Edward has a history of inappropriate behavior toward vulnerable women. There are at least 2 previous incidents that were hushed up with money and threats." Jonathan Blackwood surged to his feet. "This is outrageous. William, you're betraying your family." "No, father," William replied evenly. "I'm honoring my brother's memory and protecting his widow and child from those who would harm them, including you." Judge Peterson's ruling came swiftly after that. He confirmed the validity of Olivia's marriage to Vincent, rejected all claims of mental instability, and issued a restraining order preventing Jonathan and Edward Blackwood from approaching Olivia or her child. Furthermore, he instructed the territorial prosecutor to investigate Edward for attempted assault and Jonathan for possible fraud related to Thomas's estate. As they left the courthouse, Olivia found herself face-to-face with William Blackwood. Unlike his father and brother, his eyes held genuine remorse. "I should have acted sooner," he said quietly. "I knew what kind of men they were, but I stayed silent too long. Thomas would never forgive me for that." "You came when it mattered most," Olivia replied, her hand still firmly in Vincent's. "Thank you," William nodded. "The family holdings are in disarray with father facing legal troubles, but Thomas's your portion remains intact. I'll ensure it's properly transferred to you for your child's future." "The money doesn't matter to me," Olivia said, "just our freedom. Nevertheless, it's your right and your child's birthright." William's gaze moved to Vincent. "Sheriff Dawson, you're a fortunate man. My brother chose his wife wisely, and it seems she's chosen equally well a second time. I know exactly how fortunate I am, Vincent replied, his arm protective around Olivia's shoulders. They returned to Timberline victorious, though the journey had taken its toll on Olivia. The baby, perhaps sensing its mother's relief, decided it was time to make an appearance just 2 days after their return. Vincent paced outside their bedroom as Martha Jenkins and Dr. Miller attended to Olivia through a long night of labor. Each cry from behind the door tested his resolve not to burst in, but Martha had firmly banned him until the appropriate moment. "Husbands just get in the way," she had declared, shooing him out. "First babies take their time. Go drink coffee or clean your guns or whatever it is men do when they're useless." Near dawn, when Vincent was certain he would wear a hole in the floorboards, the door finally opened. Dr. Miller emerged, looking tired but pleased. "Congratulations, Sheriff," he said, clapping Vincent on the shoulder. "You have a son." Vincent's legs nearly gave way beneath him. A son, and Olivia, exhausted but well, she did beautifully. Martha appeared behind the doctor, her stern face softened with a rare smile. "Well, don't just stand there gaping. Go meet your boy." The sight that greeted Vincent as he entered the bedroom would stay with him until his dying day. Olivia, her golden hair dampened with sweat but her eyes bright with joy, cradling a small bundle against her breast. She looked up as he approached, and the love in her expression took his breath away. "Vincent," she whispered, "come meet your son." He sat carefully beside her on the bed, achingly aware of his own large, rough hands as she placed the tiny infant in his arms. The boy had a shock of dark hair like Vincent's own, but when his eyes fluttered open briefly, they were the same clear blue as his mother's. "He's perfect," Vincent murmured, his voice thick with emotion. "What shall we call him?" Olivia leaned her head against his shoulder. "I was thinking Thomas Vincent Dawson, to honor his past and embrace his future." Vincent nodded, unable to speak past the lump in his throat. In that moment, looking at his wife and the child he already loved as his own, he knew that his life had changed irrevocably that day. Olivia stumbled into Timberline. The winter passed peacefully, with little Thomas growing stronger each day. Vincent adapted to fatherhood with the same quiet competence he brought to his role as sheriff, though Olivia often caught him simply watching the baby sleep, wonder evident on his weathered face. Spring brought news that Jonathan and Edward Blackwood had fled to Europe ahead of multiple indictments. William Blackwood made good on his promise, ensuring that Thomas's inheritance was properly secured for Olivia and the baby. "What will you do with it?" Vincent asked one evening as they sat on their porch, Thomas sleeping soundly in his cradle beside them. The mountains were turning green again, and the air was sweet with new growth. "I thought perhaps we might build a proper house," Olivia replied. "Something with room for more children if you'd like that." Vincent smiled, drawing her close. "I'd like that very much. And perhaps," she continued, "we could set aside funds to establish a sanctuary of sorts, a place where women in difficult situations could find refuge and support." Her eyes grew thoughtful. "There are too many women with stories like mine who don't find a Vincent Dawson to believe them." "That's a fine idea," he agreed. "A fitting legacy for both Thomases." As summer bloomed across the Montana territory, the Dawsons broke ground on their new home on the outskirts of Timberline. The town had embraced Olivia completely by then, her quiet strength and compassion winning over even the most skeptical residents. Word of her planned sanctuary spread, and other women began to arrive in Timberline, a young widow fleeing an abusive brother-in-law, a girl whose father had arranged an unwanted marriage, a woman whose husband had abandoned her with 3 young children. Each found welcome and practical assistance, with Olivia coordinating a network of support throughout the town. By autumn, when Thomas took his first tottering steps across their new home's polished wooden floors, the Dawson Sanctuary was operating in a renovated boarding house on the edge of town. Vincent had deputized 2 reliable men to help manage his sheriff's duties, allowing him more time with his family and to assist with Olivia's growing mission. On a crisp October day, exactly 1 year after their official wedding, Vincent took Olivia for a ride into the mountains. Thomas remained in Martha's capable care, though the elderly woman had complained good-naturedly about their secrecy. "Where are we going?" Olivia asked as they followed a trail that climbed steadily through pine forests turning golden with the season. "You'll see," Vincent replied, a mysterious smile playing at his lips. They emerged from the trees onto a high meadow with a breathtaking view of the valley below. Timberline was visible in the distance, smoke rising from chimneys against the backdrop of snow-capped peaks. In the center of the meadow stood a small cabin, newly built but designed to blend with the natural surroundings. Olivia turned to Vincent in surprise. "What is this place?" "Our place," he answered, helping her down from her horse. "Somewhere we can escape when the town and all its demands become too much. I started building it last spring, working on it whenever I could slip away." Inside, the cabin was simple but comfortable, with a stone fireplace, sturdy furniture, and windows positioned to capture the magnificent views. A carved wooden plaque above the mantel read, "Dawson Haven." "It's wonderful," Olivia breathed, turning a full circle to take it all in. "Our own private sanctuary." Vincent moved behind her, arms encircling her waist. "I wanted to give you something to mark our anniversary. Something that belongs just to us." She turned in his embrace to face him, eyes shining. "You've given me everything already, Vincent. A home, a family, a purpose." Her hand came up to touch his face tenderly. "Most of all, you gave me your trust when no one else would believe me. You never doubted my word. And I never will," he promised, bending to kiss her softly. Later, as they sat before a crackling fire, Olivia nestled against Vincent's chest with a contented sigh. "I have an anniversary gift for you two, though it's not as grand as a cabin." "Oh?" he asked, stroking her hair. She took his hand and placed it on her stomach with a smile. "We'll need that extra room in the new house sooner than we thought." Vincent's eyes widened. "You mean?" "Dr. Miller confirmed it yesterday. Thomas will have a little brother or sister by late spring." The joy that spread across Vincent's face was answer enough, but he gathered her in his arms anyway, holding her as though she were the most precious thing in the world, which to him she was. "I love you, Olivia Dawson," he whispered against her hair. "And I love you, my steadfast sheriff." Always. 5 years passed, bringing changes to both the Dawson family and Timberline itself. The town had grown considerably, with a railroad spur bringing increased commerce and new settlers. The Dawson Sanctuary had expanded to include a school where women could learn skills to support themselves independently. Thomas, now 6 and the spitting image of Vincent except for his mother's blue eyes, had been joined by 3-year-old twins Elizabeth and Eleanor, both with Olivia's golden hair and their father's gray eyes. The family divided their time between their main residence in town and the mountain cabin, which had been expanded to accommodate the growing family. On a warm summer afternoon, Olivia sat on a blanket in their garden, watching Vincent teach Thomas to throw a lasso while the twins napped nearby under the shade of an apple tree. The sight of them together, Thomas's face serious with concentration, Vincent's patient guidance, filled her heart to overflowing. She thought back to that desperate day when she had stumbled into Timberline, certain that no one would believe her story. How wrong she had been. Vincent had believed her without hesitation, and that simple act of faith had changed both their lives immeasurably. "Mama, look," Thomas called excitedly as his small lasso settled around the practice post. "Well done, sweetheart," she called back, laughing at his triumphant dance. Vincent caught her eye across the garden and smiled, the same smile that still made her heart skip after all these years. In that moment, with the Montana sun warm on her face and her family around her, Olivia knew with absolute certainty that she had found her true home and her true happiness. The darkness of the past had been transformed by love, trust, and the courage to begin again. And for that, she would be forever grateful to the sheriff who had believed her when no one else would.